They are stable because they do not struggle against gravity. They rest in what is. Human beings, on the other hand, often try to outhold life. We tighten around uncertainty. We brace against change. We grip ideas of how things should be. And in doing so, we create tension where none was required. Letting go begins not with the mind, but with the body. Notice how holding shows up physically. The shoulders lifting slightly. The breath becoming shallow. The stomach tightening without reason. These are not flaws. They are signals. Signals that something is being held that no longer needs to be. The body understands release instinctively. You don't have to teach it how to soften. You only have to stop telling it to stay alert. In Buddhist practice, letting go is not something you do. It is something that happens when resistance ends. Think of holding a handful of sand. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips through your fingers. But when you open your hand, the sand rests naturally. Life behaves the same way. The more you try to control outcomes, the more fragile everything feels. The more you allow experience to unfold, the more grounded you become. Many people believe they are holding on to things because they care. But care does not require tension. Love does not require clenching. Responsibility does not require self-punishment. Awareness does not require force. True care is spacious. It allows breathing room. Letting go does not mean you stop participating in life. It means you stop strangling it. There is also a deeper layer to release letting go of who you think you must be. The fixer. The strong one. The reliable one. The one who never falls apart. These identities can become heavy armor. They protect, but they also isolate. At night, when there is no one watching, these roles quietly ask to be set down. You don't have to abandon them forever. Just for now. Tonight you are allowed to be undefined. You are allowed to not know. You are allowed to rest without explanation. Buddhist teachings remind us that clinging is the root of suffering, not because attachment is evil, but because it asks permanence from a world that is always changing. You cannot hold on to a moment and expect it to stay still. You cannot freeze life and expect it to feel alive. And yet, letting go does not mean losing meaning. It means discovering a deeper one. A meaning that is not dependent on outcomes. A meaning that is not threatened by change. There is a quiet strength that emerges when the grip softens. It is not dramatic. It feels like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. You may notice a subtle sense of grief as you let go, grief for effort wasted, for years spent bracing, for tension that felt necessary at the time. Let that grief be present. Release does not erase the past. It honors it by no longer repeating it. As the night deepens, consider letting go of just one thing. Not everything. Not your entire life. Just one unnecessary weight. It might be an expectation, a thought that keeps returning, a pressure that no longer fits. You don't need to name it precisely. The body knows. And as you loosen just slightly, you may feel something unexpected. Relief, not the kind that comes from resolution, but the kind that comes from honesty. The honesty of saying, I don't need to carry this right now. And in that honesty, the nervous system begins to recalibrate. The breath deepens. The heart slows. The mind loosens its urgency. This is not passivity. This is trust. Trust that life continues even when you are not gripping it tightly. Trust that awareness remains even when control fades. Trust that you can be here without defending yourself from the moment. Letting go is not an event. It is a series of small permissions. Permission to soften the jaw. Permission to drop the shoulders. Permission to rest without justification. Each small release opens space. And in that space, peace does not have to be invited. It appears naturally, like still water when the wind settles. Like quiet when the noise is no longer fed. Nothing has been lost. Only the struggle. Part 4: Impermanence, the truth that heals fear. There is a quiet belief that sits beneath much of human fear. The belief that things should stay the same. That comfort should last. That joy should not fade. That pain, once it appears, might never leave. From this belief, anxiety grows. Because life does not stay still. Buddhist teachings speak directly to this truth, not to frighten, but to free. Everything changes. Not as a punishment, not as a flaw, but as the natural movement of life itself. Impermanence is often misunderstood as loss. But in its deepest sense, impermanence is mercy. If joy were permanent, it would lose its aliveness. If pain were permanent, the heart would break. If nothing changed, nothing could heal. Fear arises not from change but from resisting it. The mind wants guarantees. It wants certainty. It wants to know how things will turn out before it can relax. But life does not offer guarantees. It offers movement. And when this movement is trusted rather than fought, something inside begins to soften. Think of seasons in a place like Vermont. Autumn does not apologize for arriving. Leaves turn, fall, and dissolve back into the soil. Winter does not cling to warmth. Spring does not demand permission to bloom. Nothing holds on. And because nothing holds on, everything renews. Human suffering often comes from asking permanence from experiences that were never meant to stay. A feeling appears and the mind asks, how do I keep this? Or worse, how do I make sure this never happens again? But impermanence answers quietly, you don't need to keep it. You don't need to escape it. You only need to allow it to move. When fear arises at night, it often carries the weight of time. It whispers, what if this feeling never goes away? What if this becomes my life? What if I'm stuck like this forever? These thoughts feel convincing because they point forward. But impermanence gently points back to reality. No feeling has ever stayed exactly the same. No moment has ever repeated itself perfectly. No state pleasant or painful has remained unchanged. Even this breath is different from the last. Fear loses its power when time is brought back to the present. Not the imagined future. Not the remembered past. Just this moment. Right now. In Buddhist understanding, impermanence is not something to accept intellectually. It is something to feel directly. You feel it in the way the breath naturally changes pace. You feel it in the way sensations shift without instruction. You feel it in the way tiredness deepens into sleep. Nothing needs to be forced. Change is already happening. The mind often tightens around change because it equates movement with danger. But movement is not danger. Stagnation is. Life flows like water through a canyon, like those carved slowly over centuries in places such as Zion National Park. The water does not argue with the rock. It does not rush. It does not panic. It moves. And in moving, it shapes the world. Impermanence teaches a profound kind of trust. Trust that you do not need to freeze life to feel safe. Trust that change does not erase meaning. Trust that letting things pass does not make you careless. It makes you free. When you stop demanding that moments last longer than they naturally do, gratitude replaces grasping. You begin to appreciate without clinging. You begin to feel without fear. You begin to rest without bracing for what comes next. Even pain, when seen through the lens of impermanence, becomes less terrifying. Pain still hurts. Loss still aches. Uncertainty still unsettles. But none of them define forever. Impermanence whispers something the mind rarely believes at first. This will change. Not necessarily in the way you expect. Not necessarily on your timeline. But it will not remain frozen. And because it will change, you do not need to exhaust yourself trying to control it. Tonight, impermanence offers relief. Relief from the pressure to hold on to good moments. Relief from the fear that difficult ones will never end. Relief from the illusion that you must secure life before you can rest. You are allowed to rest because things change. You are allowed to sleep because nothing is fixed. The night itself is a teacher of impermanence. Wakefulness fades into drowsiness. Thoughts soften into images. Images dissolve into darkness. You do not make this happen. You allow it. And in allowing it, fear loses its footing. Because fear needs permanence to survive. When everything is allowed to move, fear has nothing to cling to. As awareness settles, let impermanence be your ally. Let sensations rise and fall. Let thoughts come and go. Let the day loosen its grip. Nothing is being lost. Life is simply continuing. And you are safe within its movement. Part 5. You are not your thoughts. There is a subtle misunderstanding that quietly shapes much of human suffering. The belief that thoughts are who you are. Not just something you experience, but something you are. So when a harsh thought appears, it feels personal. When a fearful thought arises, it feels prophetic. When a self-critical thought repeats, it feels like truth. But Buddhist wisdom offers a perspective so simple and so liberating that it often goes unnoticed. Thoughts happen. Awareness remains. You are not required to merge with every thought that passes through the mind. Most people do this automatically. A thought appears, and identity rushes in to claim it. I am anxious, I am broken, I am behind, I am failing. But notice the structure of these statements. They assume that the presence of a thought equals a statement about reality. Yet thoughts are not reality. They are events. They arise due to conditions: memory, habit, emotion, chemistry, fatigue, and then they pass, often without completing themselves. If thoughts truly defined you, you would be a completely different person every few seconds. But something stays constant. That constant is awareness. Awareness is what notices the thought. It is what hears the mental voice. It is what remains present even as the content changes. This is not a philosophical idea. It is something you can feel directly. Right now, a thought may be present, but something is aware of that thought. That something does not speak. It does not judge. It does not panic. It simply knows. Buddhist teachings call this non-self, not meaning you don't exist, but meaning that who you are is not confined to mental activity. The mind creates stories. Awareness holds space. The mind categorizes. Awareness allows. The mind says this means something. Awareness says nothing at all. This is why thoughts feel so convincing when they go unnoticed. When awareness is forgotten, thoughts feel absolute. But when awareness is remembered, thoughts regain their proper size. Like clouds drifting across the Arizona desert, sky wide, bright, constantly changing. No cloud owns the sky. No cloud defines it. No cloud stays. The sky remains open. You are like that. Thoughts may pass through, dense, stormy, light, fleeting, but none of them define the space in which they appear. The suffering begins when you confuse the cloud for the sky. This confusion is deeply human. The mind evolved to narrate experience, to label, to predict, to interpret. But it was never meant to be the final authority on truth. When the mind speaks, it often speaks from habit. Old conclusions replay themselves. Familiar worries resurface. Self-judgments repeat their lines. Not because they are accurate, but because they are familiar. Familiarity feels safe to the nervous system, even when it hurts. Buddhist wisdom gently interrupts this cycle, not by silencing the mind, but by loosening identification with it. You don't have to push thoughts away. You don't have to replace them with better ones. You don't have to argue with them. You simply stop stepping inside them. There is a quiet shift that happens when you begin to notice thoughts as thoughts. Not commands. Not warnings. Not identities. Just mental weather. A thought arises, something is wrong. Awareness notices a thought is present. That single shift creates space. And in that space, the body relaxes. Because the body responds not just to thoughts but to belief in thoughts. When belief softens, tension softens. Many people fear that if they stop identifying with thoughts, they will lose motivation or direction. But what is lost is not clarity. What is lost is unnecessary pressure. Clarity does not come from thinking harder. It comes from seeing more clearly. And clarity is born in awareness. Awareness does not rush. It does not catastrophes. It does not replay the past endlessly. It rests. When you rest as awareness, even briefly, you may notice something surprising. Thoughts continue, but they no longer pull as strongly. They appear, linger, dissolve. Some are repetitive. Some are emotional. Some feel heavy. Let them. You are not required to follow them to the end. In Buddhist teaching, this is freedom, not freedom from thought, but freedom from bondage to thought. A freedom that does not depend on discipline. Only recognition. The recognition that you are the one noticing. And as night deepens, this recognition becomes especially gentle. The mind grows tired of narrating. Stories lose momentum. Images blur. Awareness remains soft, open, unforced. You do not have to hold on to it. It holds you. When thoughts come, let them pass through like distant sounds. When silence appears, let it be silent. Nothing needs to be achieved. Nothing needs to be understood completely. You are not your thoughts. You are the quiet presence in which they appear. And that presence is already at peace. Part 6: Ending the Quiet War with Yourself. There is a conflict that rarely announces itself out loud. It does not shout, it does not demand attention. It simply hums in the background of everyday life. The quiet war within. It shows up as self-criticism that feels normal, as pressure to be better, calmer, stronger, as the belief that something about you still needs fixing before you are allowed to rest. Many people don't realize they are fighting themselves. They call it discipline. They call it ambition. They call it responsibility. But beneath the labels, there is tension, a subtle rejection of what is already here. Buddhist teachings approach this inner conflict with remarkable tenderness, not by pointing out what is wrong, but by asking a different question: what if nothing about you needs to be attacked? Most inner wars begin with a misunderstanding, the belief that harshness leads to improvement, that judgment produces growth, that self-pressure is necessary for survival. Perhaps this was true at one point. Perhaps criticism once felt motivating. Perhaps pushing yourself kept things from falling apart. But over time, the cost becomes clear. The nervous system stays alert even in safety. Rest feels undeserved. Peace feels conditional. This is not strength. It is exhaustion wearing the mask of control. Ending the quiet war does not mean lowering standards or giving up on growth. It means changing the energy with which growth happens. Compassion is not indulgence. It is wisdom. When Buddhist teachings speak of compassion, they do not mean sentimentality. They mean seeing clearly without hostility. Hostility, even when aimed inward, creates contraction. Compassion creates space. And space is where healing happens. Think of how the body responds to kindness. When touched gently, muscles soften. When spoken to calmly, the breath slows. When allowed to be as it is, tension releases. The inner world responds the same way. Self-judgment tightens the system. Self-kindness allows it to unwind. Many people resist compassion toward themselves because they confuse it with letting themselves off the hook. But compassion does not deny responsibility. It removes violence from the process. Buddhist wisdom teaches that no real transformation happens under attack. Change that lasts comes from understanding, not punishment. Tonight, you are not required to forgive everything at once. You are not asked to rewrite the past. You are only invited to stop continuing the fight. Notice how effort shows up inwardly. The constant self-monitoring. The subtle inner commentary. The pressure to manage your experience. None of this is wrong, but none of it is necessary right now. The body already knows how to rest. The heart already knows how to heal. What keeps them from doing so is not lack of effort but excess judgment. Ending the quiet war begins with a simple permission: you are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to feel what you feel without explaining it. You are allowed to be tired without justifying it. You are allowed to rest without earning it. This permission is not given by authority. It arises from awareness. Awareness sees the whole picture. It sees the effort you've already given, the mistakes made with limited information, the resilience that carried you this far. Judgment isolates moments. Awareness includes them. There is nothing heroic about constant self-correction. There is something deeply human about learning to lay down the weapons. As night deepens, let the idea of fixing yourself soften. You do not need to be improved to be held. You do not need to be perfect to be at peace. You do not need to win a battle to deserve rest. Compassion is not something you generate. It is something that emerges when the fight ends. You may notice a subtle grief as this war quiets. Grief for years spent resisting yourself. Grief for gentleness delayed. Let that grief be present. It does not mean something went wrong. It means something honest is happening. And honesty is the doorway to peace. As awareness settles, notice the difference between effort and ease. Effort tightens. Ease allows. You are allowed to choose ease tonight, not forever, not as a rule, just now. In this moment, nothing is required of you. No correction, no evaluation, no self-improvement, only rest. And as rest deepens, the quiet war loses its purpose. Because there is nothing left to defend, nothing left to fix. Only life moving gently and you, finally allowing yourself to move with it. Part 7: Stillness beneath the noise. After the inner conflict softens, something unexpected becomes noticeable. Not silence, but space. The noise does not vanish all at once. Thoughts may still appear. Sensations may still shift. The world does not suddenly become empty or blank. And yet, beneath all of it, there is something steady. Stillness. Most people assume stillness is the absence of sound or thought. But Buddhist teachings point to something far more subtle and far more accessible. Stillness is not the opposite of noise. It is what holds the noise, like the ocean beneath its waves, like the ground beneath passing footsteps, like the quiet presence that remains even while the mind moves. This stillness has always been here. It was here during moments of stress. It was here during moments of joy. It was here even when life felt overwhelming. But it is often overlooked, because attention is trained to follow movement. The mind is drawn to what changes. Awareness rests in what remains. When effort relaxes, awareness naturally widens. You may notice that sounds come and go, but listening itself does not move. Thoughts arise and fade, but the knowing of them stays constant. Sensations shift, but the space in which they appear remains open. This is stillness, not something you create, not something you hold on to, not something you concentrate on. It reveals itself when interference stops. Many people unknowingly search for stillness as a future experience, something to reach after enough practice, enough discipline, enough improvement. But stillness is not waiting at the end of effort. It is present at the beginning of release. Consider early morning in a place like Zion National Park, before the trails fill, before the echoes return. Birds move. Wind touches the trees. Light shifts across stone. Nothing is frozen. And yet, everything is calm. This is the quality of stillness Buddhist teachings point toward. Not frozen quiet, living quiet. Stillness that includes movement. When you stop trying to silence the mind, you begin to hear this deeper quiet. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It feels like a gentle settling, a sense that nothing is out of place. The body recognizes it before the mind does. Breathing becomes less deliberate. Muscles soften without instruction. The heartbeat finds its own rhythm. This happens not because you made it happen, but because you stopped interfering. Stillness does not demand attention. It allows attention to rest. Many people fear stillness because they associate it with emptiness or loss. But stillness is not absence. It is presence without urgency. In stillness, nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be taken away. Nothing needs to be explained. This is why stillness feels nourishing. It does not drain energy, it restores it. When awareness rests in stillness, the nervous system receives a powerful signal: it is safe to be here. Safety does not come from certainty. It comes from permission. Permission for experience to be exactly as it is. In Buddhist understanding, this is mindfulness, not focused concentration, but gentle, inclusive awareness. Awareness that notices without correcting. Awareness that allows without grasping. Awareness that listens instead of fixes. When this kind of awareness is present, even noise becomes less intrusive. Thoughts lose their sharp edges. Sounds blend into the background. Sensations feel less demanding. Nothing is being suppressed. Everything is being held. As night deepens, stillness becomes easier to recognize. The world naturally quiets. The body moves toward rest. The mind grows less interested in narration. And in this natural slowing, stillness becomes familiar. You do not need to protect it. You do not need to hold on to it. Like the sky behind clouds, it remains whether you notice it or not. If thoughts arise, let them float. If silence appears, let it be silent. If attention drifts, let it drift. Stillness does not require precision. It requires allowance. You may begin to sense that you are not inside the noise, but that the noise is happening within something larger. Something steady, something open, something kind. This realization does not come with fireworks. It comes with relief. Relief from effort. Relief from vigilance. Relief from the need to manage every moment. Stillness beneath the noise is not an escape from life. It is the ground that allows life to unfold without struggle. And as awareness settles there, rest deepens naturally. The mind no longer needs to stay alert. The body no longer needs to brace. The heart no longer needs to protect itself. Nothing is missing. Nothing is required. Only this quiet presence holding everything gently as you continue to drift toward rest. Part 8: Sleep as an act of trust. Sleep is one of the most misunderstood experiences in modern life. It is often treated as a task to complete, a problem to solve, a state to force. People try to fall asleep the way they try to succeed by effort, by control, by strategy. But sleep does not respond to effort. It responds to trust. Every night, sleep asks the same quiet question: are you willing to let go? Not of consciousness forever, not of responsibility for your life, just of this moment. Buddhist teachings recognize sleep not as unconsciousness, but as surrender, a daily act of faith in the natural intelligence of the body. When you sleep, you release control of your breath. You release control of your thoughts. You release control of awareness itself. And yet, you wake up, the heart keeps beating, the lungs keep breathing. Life continues without supervision. This happens every night. And still, many people resist sleep because surrender feels unfamiliar. The mind has been trained to stay alert, to stay vigilant, to believe that control equals safety. But control is tiring, and safety does not come from holding everything together. It comes from knowing you are held. Sleep is the moment when the mind learns this lesson again. You cannot make yourself sleep. You can only allow the conditions for sleep to appear. Just as you cannot command the sun to set, but you can watch as light slowly fades, sleep arrives the same way, gradually, naturally, without instruction. The problem begins when the mind tries to stay in charge. It asks, am I asleep yet? Why isn't this working? What if tomorrow is ruined? These questions do not bring rest. They reinforce vigilance. Buddhist wisdom invites a radical shift here. Sleep is not something you do. It is something that happens when you stop doing. Trust replaces effort. And trust begins with permission. Permission for the body to be tired. Permission for thoughts to remain unfinished. Permission for the day to end without closure. Nothing important needs to be solved tonight. Nothing essential will be lost if it waits. Even the mind, so used to finishing every story, can be allowed to pause mid-sentence. The world will not collapse. Life will continue. There is a deep kindness in this realization. A kindness that says you don't have to stay awake to be safe. In Buddhist understanding, sleep is a teacher. It teaches impermanence, wakefulness dissolving into rest. It teaches non-control breath finding its own rhythm. It teaches trust awareness loosening its grip. You may notice moments when awareness flickers, a brief sense of drifting, images appearing without meaning, thoughts becoming fragmented. These are not mistakes. They are signs of surrender. Let them happen. You are not falling behind. You are falling into rest. Trust does not require certainty. It requires willingness. Willingness to not monitor the process. Willingness to not correct experience. Willingness to let the body lead. The body has been practicing sleep since before language existed. It knows this path. As night deepens, the mind naturally grows less interested in narration. Stories lose urgency. Thoughts blur into sensation. Attention softens. You do not need to follow this shift. You simply allow it. In Buddhist practice, this is sometimes called letting be. Letting the breath breathe itself. Letting the heart beat itself. Letting awareness rest without holding. Sleep is not the loss of awareness. It is awareness changing shape. And that change is safe. You have done it thousands of times. Tonight is no different. There is nothing you need to guard against. Nothing you need to prepare for. Nothing you need to carry forward into the night. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to be unresolved. You are allowed to rest anyway. Sleep arrives not when the mind gives permission, but when it stops asking for permission at all. Trust grows in the absence of interference. And as trust grows, effort fades. As effort fades, rest deepens. And as rest deepens, the day quietly releases you. You are not leaving anything behind. You are simply letting go for now. And that is enough. Part 9: Deep Peace Beyond Circumstances. There is a kind of peace most people spend their lives chasing. A peace that comes after things improve. After problems are solved. After answers are found. After life finally cooperates. This kind of peace is always conditional. It says I'll be okay when the situation changes, when the feeling passes, when the future becomes certain. But there is another kind of peace. Quieter, deeper, less dramatic. A peace that does not wait. Buddhist teachings point gently toward this peace not as an achievement, but as a recognition. Deep peace is not created by circumstances. It exists beneath them. Most people confuse peace with comfort. Comfort depends on conditions. Peace does not. Comfort requires control. Peace requires nothing. This is why peace can feel unfamiliar at first. It does not announce itself with excitement or relief. It arrives softly, like realizing you've been holding your breath and then letting it go. Deep peace does not remove difficulty. It removes the belief that difficulty must be resisted. When resistance ends, peace reveals itself not because life became easy, but because the fight stopped. Many people fear this kind of peace because they think it means disengaging from life. But peace does not numb. It clarifies. It allows you to experience life fully without being consumed by it. In peace, emotions still arise. Thoughts still move. Circumstances still change. But none of them define your inner ground. Think of a quiet beach late at night, somewhere the waves continue to roll in, steady and rhythmic. The water moves constantly. The surface is never still. And yet, beneath the waves, the ocean remains deep and calm. This is the nature of peace beyond circumstances. Movement on the surface, stillness at the core. The mind often resists this idea because it has been trained to believe peace must be earned. Earned through effort, earned through understanding, earned through self-improvement. But peace is not a reward. It is a state of allowing experience to rise and fall without adding extra struggle, allowing uncertainty to exist without demanding immediate answers, allowing life to be incomplete without seeing that as failure. Deep peace appears when the need to fix dissolves. Not because nothing matters, but because you stop asking the present moment to be different than it is. There is a subtle freedom in realizing that nothing is missing right now. Not forever. Not in every area of life. Just in this moment. Right now, the breath is happening. Right now, the body is supported. Right now, awareness is present. That is enough. The mind will try to argue. It will say, but what about tomorrow? What about the unresolved thing? What about the fear that hasn't gone away? Peace does not deny these questions. It simply refuses to live inside them. Peace stays here. In Buddhist understanding, this is contentment, not settling for less, but resting in what already is. Contentment does not mean you stop growing. It means growth no longer comes from dissatisfaction. It comes from clarity. When peace is no longer postponed, life softens. You stop measuring moments. You stop comparing states. You stop scanning for what's missing. And in that stopping, something profound happens. You feel held, not by answers, not by certainty, but by presence itself. This peace does not depend on how your story turns out. It does not require understanding everything. It does not disappear when thoughts return. It remains even when the mind forgets it for a while. Deep peace is not fragile. It is patient. It waits beneath every experience. Tonight, you are invited to rest there, not as an escape, not as a goal, but as a simple recognition. Life is happening. Awareness is present. Nothing needs to be added. As the night continues, this peace becomes quieter not because it fades, but because it no longer needs to be noticed. It becomes the background, the ground, the place from which sleep can arrive effortlessly. Nothing needs to change for you to rest. Nothing needs to resolve. Nothing needs to be decided. Deep peace does not ask for perfect conditions. It asks only that you stop postponing it. And as you stop postponing, the body softens further, the mind loosens its grip, and rest becomes inevitable. Part 10. Drifting into Zen sleep. There comes a point when words no longer need to lead. They simply soften and step aside. This is that point. Nothing new is being introduced now. Nothing needs to be remembered. Nothing needs to be understood. The teachings have already done what they needed to do. They have guided you back to something simple. To this moment. To this body. To this breath. Awareness no longer needs direction. It begins to loosen naturally, like a hand opening after holding on for too long. Thoughts may still appear, but they feel distant now. Less urgent. Less convincing. They arrive without asking and leave without explanation. There is no need to follow them. No need to finish them. Let them dissolve on their own like mist thinning as the night deepens. The body understands what comes next. Breathing becomes quieter. Muscles release in waves. The weight of the day settles downward and away. You do not guide this, you allow it. Zen wisdom speaks often of effortless presence, not a state you maintain, but one you fall into when effort ends. Sleep is not the loss of awareness. It is awareness resting from watching itself. A gentle forgetting, a soft surrender. As attention fades, sensations blur, edges soften, time stretches then loosens. The sense of me becomes less defined. This is not disappearance. It is rest. There is nothing to hold on to now, nothing to protect, nothing to prepare for. Life continues perfectly well without commentary. The heart beats. The breath moves. The body remains supported. You do not need to supervise this. Zen teaches that the deepest peace comes when even the desire for peace is released. And now, even that desire fades. Words slow, spaces widen, silence becomes more frequent. If images arise, let them drift. If darkness appears, welcome it. If nothing appears at all, that is fine too. There is no correct experience here. Only unfolding. You may notice brief moments of awareness, then gaps. Small flickers of thought, then stillness. A sense of floating or sinking or nothing in particular. All of this is natural. All of this is safe. Sleep does not arrive all at once. It arrives in layers, and each layer asks less of you. Less attention, less effort, less identity. Until finally, there is nothing left to let go of. Only rest. You are not falling asleep. You are being carried into sleep. By breath, by gravity, by the quiet intelligence of life itself. Nothing needs to be done. Nothing needs to be finished. Nothing needs to be remembered. You are held, and you may rest now. Let the words fade. Let awareness soften. Let the night take over gently. There is nowhere else to go. Only sleep. Only peace. Only this quiet drifting deeper and deeper into rest. As this journey gently comes to a close, one truth becomes quietly undeniable. Nothing in this experience was about adding something new to your life. It was about remembering what was never missing. From the very beginning, the story did not ask you to fix yourself, improve yourself, or become someone else. Instead, it invited you to stop running, to pause long enough to notice the tension you've been carrying without realizing it. The restless mind, the tight body, the quiet inner war, the fear of change, the constant effort to control what cannot be controlled. All of it was never a personal failure. It was simply a human response to a world that teaches us to strive before it teaches us to rest. Through gentleness rather than force, the teachings revealed something profound. Peace does not arrive when life finally behaves the way we want. It appears when resistance ends. When we stop fighting our thoughts instead of silencing them. When we let go without collapsing. When we accept impermanence not as a threat, but as a mercy. When we realize we are not our thoughts, not our stories, not our fears, but the awareness quietly holding them all. The journey moved from effort into trust, from control into surrender, from noise into stillness, and finally, from stillness into rest. Sleep became more than a physical act, it became a symbol of faith. Faith that life continues even when we release our grip. Faith that nothing essential is lost when we stop trying to manage everything. Faith that deep peace does not depend on circumstances, outcomes, or answers. The most powerful lesson from this story is simple, yet life-changing. You do not need to wait for your life to be perfect in order to be at peace. Peace is not a reward for solving everything. It is the ground that allows you to live wisely while things remain unsolved. The lesson to carry forward: stop postponing peace until conditions improve. Stop believing every thought that passes through your mind. Stop treating rest as something you must earn. How to apply this in daily life? Begin with small moments. When stress appears, don't rush to fix it, notice it. When fear arises, don't argue with it, allow it to pass. When life feels uncertain, resist the urge to control everything at once. Instead, soften your breath, relax your body, and return to what is present now. Trust that clarity comes not from pressure, but from space. Make rest a practice, not an escape. Let sleep, silence, and stillness become teachers rather than obstacles. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What part of this journey resonated with you the most? Did any insight change the way you see stress, peace, or rest? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments so others can learn from your perspective as well. And if this content brought you calm, clarity, or comfort, please consider subscribing to Buddhism in every moment. Your support helps this channel continue creating gentle, meaningful teachings to bring peace into everyday life. Thank you for being here. May this peace stay with you long after the video ends.